Hi and welcome to another video from Code Review.io. In this tutorial we will continue our series related to Firebase and Flutter. In the first video we talked about how to configure Firebase with Flutter. Just make sure to check this out. Now in this video we will talk about the authentication and configuring Crashlytics also, and have all the authenticated app to be sent via email and password login, and also the anonymous login. If you are interested in more ways to authenticate your app, make sure to add it in the comment below and I will take a look at it and we'll see how we can make another custom videos only for that matter. Now to get started, let's start by installation of Authentication and Crashlytics. So if you go to the pubdev and you search for Firebase Auth, Firebase Analytics, these are the packages that we're going to install. If I go to the code and then search for add this to be installed, to go for iOS and try to hit pod install when you go to iOS folder. For Android, if we go to Android app build Gradle, we need to add first the Crashlytics to the plugins. The second thing we need to add is into when we go to the dependencies and we try to add authentication first, dependency, the Crashlytics, and also analytics. It will be easier for us to collect the data and see how the users will behave. So that's actually, it was already recommended when we install Crashlytics. Lastly, we will do is apply this Crashlytics, apply this plugin. For the other build Gradle in the Android directory, we need to add only the changing the Kotlin version and also adding the Crashlytics Gradle inside dependencies. This version is a new version. It will not work with the old Kotlin version, so you need to upgrade your Kotlin version at least to the current one or the latest one. Otherwise it will not work. So I did a bit of cleaning up, let's say, in every file. So what we will have in the end is that main.dar file. Login screen is a separate screen. There is a home screen is also a separate file. Then there will be log surface and auth surface, which they are wrappers around authentication, and here is around the Crashlytics, and that we just need to use a singleton to call them, so it will be easier for us to follow. There will be also Firebase config, and that's the main point, is to add a current config for your Firebase and to have it ignored by gitignore, so you will not be accidentally pushing this to Git. So in the main Dart file, after initializing Firebase, and that's what we did in the first video, just make sure to check it out. After that, we need to bring the Firebase Crashlytics and then set the Crashlytics collection to enable to true, and that's only in the debug mode, so we just set it to true. Normally what you could do is enable this function which set this to false in the debug mode, while it will be only in the release mode it will be enabled. And then we expand or we enable the encode errors for Crashlytics by passing Flutter error. Any error will be caught by the recording Flutter fatal error, and then we send all the details. And there will be also another configuration for async exceptions, and that's we need also to put platform dispatcher, and whenever there is an error then we record this in Firebase Crashlytics. So in the log surface it will be, as I said, it will be a wrapper around Firebase Crashlytics methods that exposed. And what we need to do is actually make an instance of Firebase, and just make sure that to make it accessed publicly, we expose the log error where we have the reason and all of that. This will be used in a record error. We send the exception, stack trace, reason, and the print details and fatal. And that will happen also for the same for log message in case if you want to log message, and this will be used log, and then this will set the user ID. For us we don't use that much, but it can be also, you can set the user ID so you can identify whom the user is the crash happened to. There is also a custom key if you want to set a custom key for the Crashlytics, and that's actually by sending a key value pair, and that will show in the Crashlytics. In the end we are exposing a log surface variable from this class. Now for the auth service class, we are going to use also the same Firebase auth, bring it from Firebase package, and then we make the instance of it. And then again, we are making this a public, create a method called sign-in anonymous, and that will be using user credentials. It will be a future type returning by user credentials. We need to catch the exception for this. So we need to wrap it with a try and catch. We get the user credentials, and we wait to auth sign in anonymously. And then in the end, we return this user credentials as the method definition. Whenever we catch the error, then we just need to print it to see what is exactly the error, but we need to make sure also to return null. Otherwise, the return method will be complaining. Another method we will use is verify email, which is actually getting, it will be also asynchronous. When we wait for the authentication, we get the current user from the authentication instance, and we send email verification. And that will be used whenever you have the user signed in with email, and then you know already that there is an email exists. The main method that we will use actually for sign in with email password, it will be we will call it assign or create user. And why is that? Because it's actually, we need to check the user. If it exists in the Firebase, then we will be sign in. Otherwise, it will create the user. So here we are sending only email and password. It's type of a future, user credentials again, and then we wrap it with a try catch. What we will try to do first is to await for the user to be signed in. So this method, we will send email and password, and this method will return us either the user credentials if the user is already exists, or it will return as a Firebase authentication auth exception. So I will back to this later, but now for this, what we have to do, what we got is actually user credentials, and we check if the user is null, and we also check if the email is not verified. So in this case, we can also send email verification from here, depends on the user credentials, and then we return the user credentials. At this point, we are only doing sign in. Now, in case of there is throwing an exception, and that the code of the exception is user not found, it means that we don't have a user in the database, which means that we can create a new user. So the flow will be more smooth for the user, because he will not be able to see if he's a creating or sign in user, but this will be done that we are creating using the auth, and we create a user in the database with email and password via Firebase. We send the same email and password, and then we do the same. So actually getting the user credentials, user, if it's not null, then we send email verification. At this point, we don't need to check if the email verified or not, as it here, because this is just a new user. And then in the end, we return the user credentials. Otherwise, we just return null in that case. And here we are using Crashlytics, and a very good example of a Crashlytics. And we are logging an error where we say the sign in or create user failed with the exception and stack trace, and fatal is true. Well, actually it's not fatal, so I should keep it as false. But anyway, it's just an example. Other method that we will use is sign out, which is pretty simple, that we're getting the instance and we are using sign out. The other method we will use is actually getting the current user. It's not a method, it's a getter. We are put a getter inside the auth instance, and we are getting the current user. The other one is also is also getter, and this method is auth state change. It's type of stream, so we need to wrap it with the stream use type of user. So this actually will be the main point for us to identify if the user signed in or not. Now in the end, we are exposing auth service instance. Now to use this method, if we go to the main, so in the main we have our app where we initialize our app. And what we try to do is actually wrapping the home entry point with the stream builder. And this will be type of user, and we are sending the auth service auth state change, Why is that? Because this will listen to the auth state every time, and it will re-render all this again. So this is very handy, and you can use it as a starter point, or you can use it on any screen actually. So we're sending the stream here, and then we get the builder, and if the snapshot is type of waiting, so we can throw a loading spinner. And if we have a data, it means that the user is already exist, and then we can show the home screen. And here you can also use a route, but anyway, I'm using the home screen. Otherwise, we show the login screen. That means the user is not exist. We show the login screen. We want the user to log in. Now for the login screen, it will be straightforward. So we have an email, password, sign in button, and sign in anonymously. So it's a stateful widget. You need to have two text editing controller for the text field if you would like to use controllers. And then we put this in the dispose function just to make sure that it will not be still running. And then we are wrapping single child scroller view all our fields with the container. You can have some padding here, some sizing from the top, and then we have our text fields. We threw the email controller here. Here we also have the another text field, which is for the password. Then we will have a text button, and then whenever it's pressed, it will check if the email controller text is not empty. The same for the password. I would consider it as a basic validation. And then we use auth surface. We sign in or create the user. We send the email with the text, the password controller with the text. And then we have also the button with the text where we say sign in. That's the same will happen also with sign in anonymously. And I would suggest if you are starting, please use sign in first anonymously. So if you are going to add any provider for the authentication, you need to make sure to enable it. So for here, we need to enable anonymous, and then also enable email and password. Later, if you are trying to do any other services providers, you can also enable them here, and then follow the documentation, what it says regarding every provider. Another caveat, and it's an important one, when you're trying to create this from the simulator, at least for in the development mode, then you need to make sure that the user actions enumeration protection is disabled, because it's enabled by default. So otherwise you will have an issues doing this during the development. Now for the home screen, it will be stateful widgets also, and then we have a future builder. This will be linked to the current user. This is coming from the auth surface instance, checking if the current user data is exist. Then we try to put the email. So here we are printing the email that coming from the user data. So if the the email is not verified, then we are adding a button where the user can trigger to verify the email. And that's will actually, we are using the auth service again, and we send in verify email. If the user is not exist, we are throwing just a message that the user is not exist. And then here is just testing buttons where we need to have types to test Crashlytics, especially in the debug mode, but you should not keep this for the production. So the first one is actually will trigger the crash method from Crashlytics, and the other one, it will be just throwing an exception that will be also logged in Firebase Crashlytics. The last thing on the home screen is actually the user here, what you see, and this is actually just an easy way for to test how the auth surface to use sign out, which actually will log out and also send the user to the login screen. And then if I click on logout, this will bring me to the logout, and now I can use code review again, and we send sign in again, and then we are logged in again. So that's actually good because all the code now is working. So for iOS part, let's try to put any email here. So let's say that we need to use any email. So and then this is not exist in the Firebase. So for example, this is the dashboard. We have the authentication. Here we have the Crashlytics. This is what I was trying to do during the test, and I was trying to see. You can see it's when it's logged, and then it uses Crashlytics Flutter error, render flux overload, and then here we have actual crash, and the name of the crash, or the description of the crash, it was says this is a test crash caused by calling .crash in Dart. So that's for Crashlytics. For the authentication, we can use that I use anonymously. Anonymously will increase the user every time. Here we have the code review 0.email. That's actually the email that I'm using, which is I'm logged in Android. And now I will show you, for example, in iOS. So let me go to the code in iOS. So this is a new email. Let me try to sign in. Voila, then we are already logged in. But here, let's just reload, and voila, we see also that the registration for codereview.1@gmail.com. So for the analytics part, you can see that there are 2 users in the last 30 minutes, and that's indeed because we use this user and this user. With that, we reach to the end of the video. I hope that was helpful. Please let me know in the comments below if you want to have another videos regarding the other ways of the authentication and another providers. Don't forget to subscribe and share, and thank you for watching, and see you next time.